Hi there and welcome to an evening with Queensryche. Late last year, Seattle's original rock band returned to the scene with their new album, Promised Land. And tonight we're joining Queensryche in Paris on their European tour to find out all about the new record. Now that means in-depth and revealing interviews with all 5 band members, along with Queensryche live performance excerpts and videos galore. And we're also going to be taking you behind the scenes to find out all about Queensryche's amazing staging and production on the Promised Land tour. So for the next 2.5 hours, which is just about the same amount of time that Queensryche are on stage on this tour, you should be prepared to be amazed by your journey to Queensryche's Promised Land. From Paris, it's all coming at you, courtesy of Europe's #1 rock show, Headbangers Ball. Well, if you're a regular viewer of Headbangers Ball, then you'll already know that Queensryche are one of my favourite bands of all time, so I can't think of a better way of starting off this Queensryche special edition of Headbangers Ball than with Revolution Calling from the 1988 album Operation Mindcrime. We're in Paris for this Queensryche special and making a very welcome return to Europe. We've got Queensryche, of course, on their European tour, and I'm joined by Jeff and Chris first up tonight. So, like I said, it's really great to have you guys back in Europe, and we're joining you actually quite near the beginning of the tour. Have things got off to a smooth start, bearing in mind you've got quite a big production and staging out on the road with you?
Yes, it's a smashing start, really. We've had we had about 5 days of rehearsal in Glasgow, and then the tour is going along smoothly already. We've got a really good crew of people that have been working very hard on putting it together, and the band's playing well, and the audiences are turning up to see the show, so everything is good.
And of course, you've been back on the road now for the first time, I think it's in 2 years. So how are you feeling getting back into touring mode and all being back together and everything and traveling? And
that is great to be back. Actually, this is the smoothest, where's the wood to knock on? This is the smoothest production so far at the beginning of a world tour that we've had, which is a real compliment to our crew, who's worked very hard, and ourselves. We can pat each other on the back. We've been rather well prepared for this. We did some rehearsal in Seattle at home before we came out too. So yeah, we're really excited, and people seem to be having a good time at this show. So
things are off to a smooth start. Good. And we're going to be showing you some Queensryche live performance excerpts throughout the show, so watch out for those. But guys, we want to talk about the Promised Land album, and I think it has been well documented in interviews that you did take a year off. I know you recorded Empire in 1990, toured for 2 years, took a year off, then got into the writing and recording for the new album Promised Land. How important did that year of downtime actually turn out to be?
Well, it was really important. We decided that just to get a fresh perspective, we needed to disconnect, as it were, from each other.
Unplug.
Yeah, just for a little bit. And just try and touch our feet back on the ground, away from the spotlight, and away really just from the music industry. I think it was real healthy for us to do that, and it wound up just focusing inwards. The Promised Land album is a bit of a psychological tour de force, a lot of self-analyzation, and we had a lot of fun digging up all the old garbage out of our our compartments in our brains, and coming up with what we felt about it. So
yeah, well, that does take me actually nicely onto my next question, because you did enjoy multi-platinum success with the Empire album, but listening to Promised Land, I somehow get the feeling, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here, that success was kind of like a double-edged sword for you guys, and that you experienced a downside to it as well.
Well, I think one thing, if I can elaborate on what Chris was saying, at least from my perspective, getting off the road was a time of really looking at where I had been and where I was at the particular moment after the Empire tour, and in order to figure out where I was going to go next. And for me, I know doing a world tour like what we did with Empire was exhausting. And I mean, although it was very successful and we all had a great time doing it, it takes its toll on you to tour like that. And I didn't even want to listen to music when I came off the road, and I found that very shocking because I've always loved music. And taking that year off and not listening to anything and just kind of listening to what was going on in my head was very, I don't know, I guess it paved the way for new inspiration, you know. And I found myself falling in love with music again. One day I had an idea, and that began, you know, the road to working with the guys again and putting together new music. So in a sense, it was the right thing to do at the right time.
So a lot of self-analysis went on for this record. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we've got the very first video from Promised Land on the way for you right now, and this is I Am I, and I think we could say that this is a song kind of about finding your true self, finding your identification in life.
Exactly.
Good. Well, I summed it up for you. This is Queensryche from Promised Land. This is I Am I, and we'll talk to the guys some more after these videos. Shortly to be seen right across Europe as support to Megadeth, that was Corrosion of Conformity with their excellent new video, Clean My Wounds. They get the seal of approval from Headbangers Ball, as of course do Queensryche. It's a Queensryche special here on the show. The whole entire 2.5 hours dedicated to the band talking about Promised Land. And I'm going to press you a little bit more on what we were talking about in the last interview, Jeff and Chris, because I would say that the album title track perhaps best sums up the overall theme of the album. And I'm wondering, is your Promised Land being able to balance your professional lives with your personal lives rather than this whole American dream idea?
Well, yes, now it is. But part of writing the album, for me at least, was recognizing that I had sort of bought into that American dream and was pursuing success and all the trappings pretty diligently, you know, throughout my life, because that's how I was brought up. And I think taking that year off and doing a lot of soul searching and reading, and it sort of taught me to ask questions even more about everything in my life. And I think we all tend to take a lot for granted, you know, as we grow up, and because all our input is basically what we've been taught, you know, by our parents. And when we started working on the album, we were asking these questions of ourselves: who are we? Why are we here? And how did we get here? What is important to us? And we sort of came up with this conclusion that there are three main areas that sort of are three main influences that shape the individual, and that is your parents, institutions such as schools, the military, corporations, just the whole business sort of mentality, and the media.
The media.
And so...
hence the beginning of the I Am I video.
Exactly. And so we sort of focused on those three areas and wrote songs based upon that theme, and how the media has affected us, how our parents have affected us, and how these institutions have affected us. And that's basically the album in a nutshell.
But also I think how success affected your personal lives as well, because when you reach a certain level as you did, you know, you have, if you're going to continue and be happy outside of the band, you have to be able to balance the two, don't you?
Yeah, we took a real close look at the definition of success, and I think that where Jeff's comment about we're sold a certain commercial in our consumer society that's so programmed into commercials of what success is supposed to be, and others judge us, all of us, by what we do and how much we make and all of these things. And you know, we just started realizing that success has to be, it's a definition that only the individual really should be able to answer for themselves, you know. I shouldn't be able to determine what someone else's success or passion in life is, or goal, and they shouldn't do that for me. So Promised Land is really an affirmation of the individual, It's a very positive message that's in this album, buried beneath some, tough psychological kind of lessons and stuff, but it's really talking about that people really hold the key to their own happiness if they just go search for it, and find it, and exclude the pressures of society trying to shape them into something that they're not, or someone else's version of what they should be, that we really all hold, the key to our own happiness within ourselves. And each of us, it's something different, for everyone. And for us, we realized that years ago we hooked up and we shared this passion in music and for music, and that this was at least from what we want to do with our lives, whether we make money or not, that was what that part of it was. And then a personal life and love and family and something is a different thing too. So I hope people, when they dig into the album, if anything, they just come up looking at themselves again, looking in the mirror and saying, I'm really the one that should decide what I should do in this life while I'm here. And I hold the key to my own destiny and happiness, and no one else does.
I agree, and I think if you find spiritual and inner happiness, then the rest falls into place, doesn't it? So I think that's a very good point you've made.
But we all seem to try to jump on this bandwagon of judgment. We judge each other by the clothes we wear, our haircuts, the kind of music we listen to, and really at the end of the day, all that does not matter,
Well, thank you for that insight. I think that's very interesting. Moving on to the kind of following on from that, actually, all the band members were involved in the songwriting and the lyrics and so on. And it's interesting that there is this common theme running through the album. It could almost have been written by the same person if you didn't kind of look at who wrote what. Do you think that this makes Promised Land Queensryche's most honest album ever? Because it seems that you kind of lived the record before you wrote it.
Well, I don't know. Gosh.
Maybe I'm being too profound here.
No, I think actually that this is probably the first album that is a sum total of all the other albums in our life experience to equal, this album. The others were...
Say Montmartre in Paris. So I'll see you for more from Queensryche after the break and after this live performance.
Watching the sand fall, listening for the knock on my door, and waiting for promised land. This is all, 'cause it's not good. reaching from the floor again. The same old sad song. Bartender, bring another drink for their favorite song. Where did it all go wrong? What's the use keeping holding on? Here's to love, hate, to promises and lies.
You may not hear it.
Well, Paris really is calling the Headbangers Ball tonight. We're on location in the city of Paris to bring you this Queensryche special, and we will be meeting all band members throughout the duration of the show. And as you can see, Jeff is still with me, but we're now joined by Scott, so I'll say welcome to Scott. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Promised Land album. And in the last segment, we were talking about how you took this kind of a year or so off and rejoined the real life and so on. So how did you get back into writing mode for Promised Land? What was the kind of catalyst or whatever to get back into that kind of mindset?
Actually, it was just something we just kind of fell into. You know, we took the time off after the Empire tour, and in the process of doing so, we all ended up buying some of the same type of equipment. Recording equipment at home, so we were able to pass tapes around when the time came. And in the time of taking off, everybody was just kind of at home working on their own ideas. And when we decided to, get back and pool our thoughts together, and we were ready to get back and do another record, we just kind of took all the ideas everybody had, and we passed tapes around and did more recordings on each other's tapes and added things to them, and figured after a few months of doing that we had enough material to do a full record, and so we went up to a log cabin about 200 miles outside of Seattle on an island, and spent 5 months there taking all the tapes that we had and kind of just mishmashing it all together and doing some more recording up there at the cabin, and just finishing it off basically.
I want to talk about that a little bit more later on, actually, but going back, you mentioned the home studio thing there. When Queensryche formed, I think it's over 10 years ago, you actually started out in your parents' basement, didn't you? And you kind of went back to that formula of kind of working from home kind of thing as well, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, and it's come full circle. We've just changed homes.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, actually, we even did some stuff at my parents' house still on this record. So we can say that every project, that the dungeon, we call it, has been involved in some way. Now it's a beer factory for my dad downstairs. He's brewing his own home beer, so...
Oh, it sounds like the perfect environment for making music. So did the overall theme of the lyrics kind of inspire the musical direction? I mean, I'm just wondering what came first. Did you I mean, I think you said that you came up with riffs first, or I mean, was it clear from the off kind of what kind of direction this album was going to take? You were all kind of thinking the same way?
Well, I think we were all thinking the same way, but we hadn't talked about how we were thinking yet. And when we got back together and regrouped, we all started just sharing what we've been experiencing individually, and I sort of recognized that there was a theme there. And so everyone had been sort of writing musical bits and pieces over this period of time, and we just started looking at the bits that would fit with the lyrical theme. We actually wrote a lot of material, and we chose the songs that appeared on the album because they all sort of fit nicely together. And so we saved some of the other stuff for I don't know, future use, I suppose. But this album, we were looking for capturing an atmosphere and really touching upon the theme as much as possible and trying to match lyrics with the music.
You mentioned the cabin in the San Juan Islands, which is very isolated. Did that help you kind of really focus in on what you were doing? Because obviously there weren't any distractions.
Yeah, actually, that whole idea was kind of a carry forward of the idea that we started doing all these ideas at home in the first place, and we wanted to keep that relaxed, no pressure type atmosphere to continue on. So we got the log cabin to to definitely get away from everything and to focus very well and be relaxed, not spending a lot of money in somebody else's studio. And it really gave us the ability to not really be influenced by anything else around us. And so, the record being, the idea behind the record is a very personal, inside type of record. And it just gave us the ability to really focus on the inside because there was nothing else going on around us except for, nature, seals and whales and stuff. But it was very calming, and it was a good place to be.
I think another thing that was kind of interesting too was the fact that we had been off the road and away from each other for a long time, and by all of us staying in the cabin together and working on a project was it sort of helped bring in that communal sort of
chemistry going. Yeah.
Right, exactly, and we all found ourselves focusing on the project and rekindling our relationships again, with each other, and it was like we picked up and took off where we left off.
It was a good prelude to getting on the road and being in the bus forever with each other. We figured out let's do it at home first, get all the things out of the way, and then we'll go out on the road.
Good idea. Well, we've got some more music on the way for you from Queensryche, and we're actually going to turn the clock back to very early on in the band's career. And actually, this is Queensryche live in Tokyo. We think from about...
Well, I think it's 1984 because we had just finished 3 months of recording in London, actually, and in the winter of '84, and then we went to Japan in August for our first tour there. So this was filmed at that time.
Good. So we're going to have a look at that. It's a classic performance, and you'll see that the guy's image has changed a great deal since those early days. This is Queensryche live in Tokyo, as we said, and Take Hold of the Flame. Headbangers Ball bringing you all the action from the Queensryche European tour. We're joining the guys in Paris to talk about the new album, Promised Land. Jeff and Scott on hand to give us the inside track on the new record. And if you've listened to the album, which I hope you have, you'll know that there certainly are some heavier moments, but there's also more of a kind of overall acoustic feel. And I'm wondering, did you kind of redefine your idea of heaviness for this album? It doesn't have to be about big power chords, does it?
No, it doesn't really. We were trying to give the music size and space, and because I suppose of the lyrical direction, making impact with dynamics and having someplace to go. We all love power chords, and we like the big chunky guitar staccato sort of approach as well. But an entire album like that to us, at least at this point, seemed kind of tedious. So we decided to play with dynamics quite a lot and give the music someplace to go, and just looking for new ways of doing things. And it's not to say our next album is going to be anything like this. But this seemed right for the time and the subject.
I think the lyrics add a new intensity as well, don't they?
Well, we try.
I mean, you mentioned there that you kind of tried to keep things creatively challenging. Is that where the kind of experimentation with different instrumentation came in as well?
Yeah, pretty much. We've always, ever since we got together way back in the early 80s, was setting no limits for ourselves was kind of a goal that we always talked about, never having boundaries in what we did. And on this record, it's just another extension of that and wanting to expand our musical palette and horizons by not always doing the same thing with the instruments that we have, trying different ways of, like you said, redefining heavy. A song like Bridge, which is lyrically a heavy idea, but musically it's kind of goes the other way.
And it's a nice dichotomy.
Yeah, exactly. And just instrumentation on this record, we just wanted to experiment on different things. We have saxophone, we have all sorts of different things that we've never done before. Which is another thing about being on the log cabin that we spoke about earlier, was not spending money on a time clock in somebody else's studio. We could spend days experimenting on things that we'd turn around and go, oh, wow, doesn't really work, but we spent the time, and let's move on to something else, and you don't have to worry about, you just spent $5,000 in 2 days doing something that didn't work. So it really gave us a chance to try things that normally we wouldn't have done. So overall, it was a vibe.
Very nice, relaxed atmosphere by the sound of it. Now, we've been talking off camera, Jeff, about how much the rock scene has changed since you've been away. I'm wondering, we're always saying on Headbangers Ball that Queensryche are the original Seattle band, make no mistake. But do you feel any kind of affinity with the Seattle scene? In maybe, I thought, on the lyrical trends and also the whole kind of anti-rock star ethic that came out in that music?
I think it's a very healthy turn, really. We've been in the business for quite a few years, and we've seen all kinds of trends come and go, fads, and musical changes. And I know when we were first starting out, heavy rock or metal, nobody knew what it was. Everybody was into what I guess you would define as new wave music. And so we were sort of looked upon as outcasts and doing something pretty revolutionary at the time. And now, things have changed again. It seems like every 10 years there's sort of this swing of things that goes by.
Disco's coming back now.
Yeah,
I mean,
who would have thought?
Go figure.
But I think Queensryche has risen above that. You followed your instincts, and you haven't been affected really by what's gone on.
Well, we like to think of ourselves as musicians firstly, rather than the R word, rock star. Yeah. But I think if you just keep focus on that, that this is what you do. You're a musician. You're here to experiment with music and express yourself that way. Then you don't get caught up in that kind of other world.
Absolutely. I think that's very important. Okay, well, we're going to talk to the guys some more. We have to take another short break right now, but taking us into that break, you should check out some more Queensryche live in Paris. And here they are doing what they do best, live on stage. We'll see you after the break. Yes, it's the Headbangers Ball coming at you from Paris. We're out on the Queensryche European tour, and welcome back to you guys watching. And now we've got Chris back with me, and also for the first time on the show, it's time to say hello to Michael. So welcome to Headbangers Ball. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, and thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much.
It's great to see these guys back, isn't it? I'm sure you agree out there in Europe. Now, in the last segment, actually, we were talking about how you guys went up to the San Juan Islands and went into this isolated cabin and communed with nature and everything. How I was going to ask you how important your producer's role, Jimbo Barton, was in helping you kind of create and maintain that very relaxed atmosphere.
Well, basically, when we brought Jimbo into it, we had a stack of ADAT tapes, all demos and some final stuff. And his job was to pretty much organize it and make sense of it, because we were really lousy bookkeepers. And so once we got all that sorted out, he kind of got in the vibe, and he said, great, and we ended up using about 80 to 90% of the actual demos that we recorded, at various times and in different places. So, and then as well, we did some jams and recorded some different things in the log cabin and outside and everything. So it was, his role was just to become, part of us and to just get in on the vibe and organize the chaos.
Because you are such fine musicians that I'm kind of surprised that you do need a producer. Would you ever consider just producing yourselves?
Well, actually, we co-produced this with Jimbo, and initially we contemplated doing it ourselves, but that inevitably leads to, someone's got to kind of steer a little bit. It's nice to have some objectivity in there somewhere. And to prevent us from killing each other, which, someone would inevitably step in and start, making decisions. And it was just kind of nice to have, we have a trust with Jimbo. If we ever get to a point where there's a couple guys in the band that maybe feel one way on something and a couple others feel another way, it was always nice to be able to kind of toss it over to Jimbo and say, well, Jimbo, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And then it was just nice, to take some of the pressure off of trying to have like a little, dictatorship thing happening, which doesn't happen. I mean, we work really nicely together, but also, I guess the main reason that we brought Jimbo in is because, the producer's role, or someone that we would bring in to work with us, is really to take a snapshot of what we're doing, and capture those moments. We did that with the demos, as Michael said. So much of it was already there, but we feel so comfortable with Jimbo, and he's an expert. The guy, he can mix. He could, we started thinking to ourselves, well, we've got to mix all these demos and make some sense out of it. Bring them all together, and that's. Jimbo was able to blend things that were recorded at Michael's house on one day with stuff that was recorded at my house and Jeff's house, and we would all sometimes take different approaches to the same song, and things would sound very different. So he could bring those together and try and make them live under the same roof, so to speak, without too much effort.
Yeah, that's a real skill. That's great.
Yeah.
You have to realize that when you have 5 creative maniacs running around, you've got to have somebody with a whip.
Yes, that sums it up really, doesn't it? That was, thank you for that, Michael. Now, some of the lyrics could be open to interpretation in different ways, but Bridge is the most poignant and direct track on the album, which was written by you, Chris. I would imagine that was a hard song to write.
Yeah, that was a track really that took, this many years for me, I suppose, to be able to look back and get some sort of perspective on a relationship. My relationship with my father. I think the song was triggered by me becoming a father during the time that we came off of the Empire. I have a beautiful little daughter named Riley.
Congratulations.
Thank you. She's 2 years old, and she's wonderful. But I started looking at myself really and recognizing, as a result of me thinking of myself as a father now, it started getting me looking at how that role was played in my life, and basically it was a vacancy. I had a real fulfilling childhood from a parental perspective, but it was just from my mom. And so anyway, Bridge is a song that really is my perspective on the importance of having a foundation in really any relationship, that it's not something that can just appear out of thin air. It's something that has to be nurtured and developed and really built. And I thought Bridge was just that's the metaphor, that I chose to use as a link between, people. And the song really, it spells it out like it was an attempt to try and create a relationship really out of something that wasn't there.
Well,
So
I'm sure we can all relate to that. Good. Okay, so with a video directed by Matt Mahurin, this is that very track we were talking about, written by Chris. This is Bridge. And we're still talking to Queensryche on their European tour. Chris and Michael here with me at the Elysee Montmartre in Paris. And talk a little bit more generally now. How do you feel that you've changed as people over, since the success of Empire, and how has the chemistry of the band been tested by these changes? Because I think it's interesting to know that Queensryche have had the same lineup since day one.
Well, I think the chemistry has certainly endured many tests. We had everything from a change in our management, which was a real test of the chemistry years ago, which I know doesn't sound like much, but that was a pretty turbulent time back then. But I would imagine the popularity of the band happening over a gradual period of time, I think has been good for us. It's allowed people to adjust in increments. And I know that many bands these days, it's so easy in this, in the world of satellite communication, and a band can emerge out of nowhere and just be huge instantaneously. And it's a lot to digest. The life really gets turned around backwards. Everyone knows who you are and recognizes you, and your financial status changes immeasurably, and hopefully sometimes not, but I mean, I'm talking about people wonder why people are so messed up, some people that attain real huge success so instantly, and it's a lot to deal with. For us, I just think we've been blessed with just some strong friendships. I think originally from the get-go it was a common interest in what we do together, but I think everybody's been able to remain very good friends, and we're not just doing this still because we're boxed into doing something. I mean, people get on really well together, and we recognize our chemistry is strong.
Good.
Yeah, it's been a gradual progression, and our whole interest in this was to create music and to be creative, and thus you have to leave the egos kind of on the side. And with that philosophy intact, we've managed to stay, just on the path.
Good.
And I think we'll always be progressive in that, and we'll always be able to get along. It's just something that's unique to ourselves, and it works.
You're very lucky to have it. It's very, very important, especially when you're out on the road for months and months and months and so on. It's really, really good. I mean, returning to the album, I found it quite challenging to listen to it and digest it all. And it is somewhat depressing in some ways, but do you say that overall it has a very positive message? I think there's a message of hope there.
Yeah, I think that we, it's a very true album in the sense that sometimes, I don't know, life isn't all completely up. I mean, Empire was pretty much a fairly up album, I think.
But you had like almost love songs there as well, like Jet City Woman.
Exactly. And those are real parts of us, and I think Promised Land is just kind of it has a little bit of a cynicism in it that, maybe after the success of something like Empire, that it's like people really have this fantasy that maybe if they win the lottery, that all the problems in their life will be solved, once they've attained a certain level of success.
Well, I haven't won a lottery, but I know that success brings a whole new set of problems.
Well, there were problems. I mean, when we were struggling to get started, there were more problems, I mean, it was tough. We're living a dream come true. Life for us is, this is it. This is what everybody ever wanted to do. But I think that this idea that, that it has to be, you constantly have to find within yourself the passion, to do something, and I don't know. We've been lucky. The album has got a, getting back to your question and not off on my tangent, which I do so well. It is an underlying positive message to what seems like on the surface kind of a bummer vibe.
And on that note, we will go into our next short break, but really I've got so much to ask the guys about the Promised Land album that I'll be talking to them some more after that. We're also going to be taking you down to the Wild Hearts album launch party, a little bit of change of scene for you there for a few minutes after the break. And we're also going to be talking to Queensryche's tour manager about the staging and production on this tour. So lots to look forward to on this Queensryche special. We'll take that short break now, and taking us into the break, we're going to see more of Queensryche live on stage at the Elysee Montmartre in Paris.
Dr. Davis, telephone please. Let me hold Dr. Blair, Dr. Blair, Dr. J. Hamilton, Dr. J. Hamilton.
All alone now, save for the memories of what we had, what we knew. Every time I try to leave it behind me, I see something that reminds me of you. Every night the dreams return to haunt me. No rosary wrapped around your throat. I lie awake and sweat the pain to fall asleep. See your face looking back at me. Looking back at me. Then I raise my head and stare into the eyes of a stranger. Always know not to never rise. People always run away from the eyes of a stranger. We could know what lies behind my stare. Just wanna stay up
More from Queensryche on the way now from Paris at this special edition of Headbangers Ball dedicated to the band. It's great to have them back in Europe. And as you can see, Michael is still with me, but Eddie has joined us now as well. And we'll be hearing a little bit of his thoughts on the new record, Promised Land. And just kind of generally covering the overall theme of the album. We have kind of talked about the theme, but do you see it as kind of an autobiographical record of kind of almost like your whole lives, because there's things that could come from childhood and right up to kind of adult life? Do you see it as kind of covering a very wide period?
Well, for me, it's more of a subconscious exorcism.
Right.
It's dealing with past negative luggage that we've all dealt with, and the song "Damage" deals with driving a nail into the head,
Right.
which for me is the letting go of all the subconscious memories and letting them flow, and dealing with them and sorting them out, and just getting rid of all the negative baggage that we've been dealing with.
Right. So when you've actually gone through that and you've cleared all that away, it leaves the future like straightforward, and you can carry on without having to deal with that.
Yeah, it's also like dealing with success, and the pros and cons, through the years. At whatever you do, if you're successful, you look back and you look at all the things that, that you've experienced, and, basically, that's that.
You really learn to deal with life on a different plane of existence,
Yes.
because you see what is possible, and it's easier to attain, whereas you kind of trash all the negative elements, all the fear, and I can't do this, and that just becomes trash, and then basically you're back to a point where anything's possible if you stick your mind to it.
So I would say overall that the album has the theme of kind of finding spiritual and emotional happiness from within.
That is correct. You hit it right on Right on the nail, right on the head.
But you do have to go through a lot of traumas and lots of different experiences to really come to that conclusion anyway yourself, don't you?
Well, unfortunately, yes, but you learn to deal with problems and errors that basically they unfold the truth, and you just learn to deal with it that way. It's just positive thinking.
Absolutely. So, Eddie, can we learn from the Queensryche album Promised Land? Can we learn from the experiences that you went through and by reading the lyrics?
Yes, with a capital Y.
Good. Positive mental attitude there as well, very positive. So on that note, we are actually going to take just a few steps back from the Queensryche tour just for a few minutes, because yesterday the Wild Hearts had an album launch party in Birmingham in association with Raw magazine, and right now we're going to take a look at the festivities surrounding that party, give you a preview of some of their new material from their upcoming new album. You'll find out all about it in this report, and then after that we are going to be talking to Queensryche's tour manager Howard, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about the production and staging used by Queensryche on this European tour. So more from Queensryche to come, but right now we're crossing over to Birmingham and the Wild Hearts album launch party to find out all about their new record. Well, that was a little bit of mayhem down at the Wild Hearts album launch party in Birmingham last night, but right now we are back on the Queensryche European tour. We're coming at you from Paris. We're going to be meeting up with the band a little bit later on, but on these special editions of Headbangers Ball dedicated to our favourite bands, we do like to try and take you a little bit behind the scenes, and this is particularly relevant with Queensryche because they are bringing a very big staging and production to Europe this time around on Promised Land. And to find out more about it, I'm joined by Dan, who designed the whole show, and also by Howard, the Queensryche tour manager. So Dan, if we could start with you, tell us a little bit about the concept behind the whole Queensryche experience.
The whole experience was designed around the band's thesis of there's a story being told with the entire show.
Yeah.
Which starts at the beginning of the show and follows through, which is the adventures of the band's hero continuing on from the Operation Mindcrime and from the operation of their last record.
Right.
And everything is designed around that story.
Good. And we can see these like big screens going on in the background here. Now I would imagine that for your part, actually syncing up all the pictures with what's happening on stage, how difficult is that?
It's a pretty complex operation. I think we got it pretty well in hand. It's so far so good. We've done about 8 shows and everything seems to be working very well.
Good. So it's not just a listening experience, it's actually a visual experience all tied in.
It's a multimedia presentation with the projection. It's a spectacular light show, and it's a remarkable sound experience as well.
Good. Okay, well we'll ask Howard now, how many people are actually involved behind the scenes keeping this tour on the road?
Well, there's about 40 people involved out here, and they all come from all over the world, and we keep it on the road quite efficiently.
Yeah. I mean, as we can see, there's a lot of equipment. How long does it actually take to set it all up and then take it all down again at the end of the night?
Well, actually, it's about an 8-hour, setup and about a 3-hour teardown.
Wow. So it's pretty stressful being out on the road and working behind the scenes as well, isn't it? So are you just involved, Dan, in keeping it running on a daily basis? What's your role on the tour now that the actual film is all done?
Well, I come in with the guys who come in first, and we leave with the last of them at the end of the day. And we come in about 9 or 10 in the morning. The band play at about 7 or 8 at night, and actually it only takes us about 90 minutes to put the thing back out. Right. This is a pretty ambitious show for the places we're playing in Europe. It's very large.
Yes, it is. It is. So. We certainly appreciate that. And it is billed as an evening with Queensryche, isn't it, Howard? There's no support band, so you very much. I think it's going to be a very intense experience.
Well, it is, and it gives everyone a chance to see the band playing for over 2 hours, which is quite unusual.
And they cover a lot of ground from, like you said, Dan, all the material from across the board on the albums.
Yeah, they do the complete retrospective of everything that they have, and it's with a lot of the Promised Land involved.
Okay, and we've got this plexiglass screen here, which is in front of Scott's drum kit, and actually I know why this is here, but you better tell us the technical jargon.
Well, basically, so it doesn't actually bleed. The sound doesn't bleed into the bands from their ear monitors, and it contains the drum sound for sound purposes. It gives us that overall live concert sound that everyone appreciates.
And it actually gives an extra 11 dB to the volume because this stops the drums feeding back.
11.23.
Well, we have to be accurate. Yeah. And were the band involved in actually the whole concept behind the film that we see in the background?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is their, it's an extension of their music, an extension of their artistic vision.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much to both you guys for talking to us. It's fascinating what goes on behind the scenes, and I'd love to actually ask you how you got into being a production manager and a designer as well. I think that would be a whole nother conversation.
I made a big mistake a long time ago.
Well, you're certainly done a fantastic job with this film, and you're going to see some more of Queensryche in action right now. Thank you to Dan and Howard for sharing some insights. Fascinating stuff. I wish I had more time, but we've got to go into some live performance now, and after the break we'll be back for a final chat with Queensryche and bringing you the European tour dates. So let's check out the band live right now. I'll see you after the break with the Queensryche dudes.
Do something about this blues stage. Everywhere I see decay, mechanized, sterilized. Visions and reality, I must release my rage. Oh, I'm destined, feeling so destined.
Hi there, you have made it to the final part of Headbangers Ball. It has been our pleasure to bring you an evening with Queensryche. We're in Paris with the band, and as you know, Headbangers Ball runs for 2.5 hours, and if you come and check out the Queensryche European shows, you will find that Queensryche are on stage for round about that length of time, about 2 hours 20 minutes actually, I think. So guys, tell us a little bit about the set list that you're actually playing on the European tour, and kind of you must have to get really in good shape and good fitness to actually play a 2 hour 20 set.
Yeah, it's a pretty invigorating evening actually from most of our standpoints. The songs are kind of a selection of all our albums, and we sort of tried to put the show together as a theme, sort of this is your life, so to speak, where each song sort of relates to our development as people or individuals, and so the whole show is a sort of a concept of the development of the individual.
Wow, fantastic. And we were talking to Howard a little bit earlier in the show, and he was telling us about these fantastic screens. They really do look great. Actually, when we were talking earlier as well, Chris, Jeff was saying about how all of you went through a re-evaluation period in your lives, and I was wondering, did Promised Land help you recapture some of the energy and excitement that you felt about music in the early days? Did that re-evaluation period also take that in as well?
Well, yeah, I think it probably, with all the time spent recording and touring in this ongoing cycle, the year off, I think, really is what gave everybody the time to just, really stop and look at what we'd created together and appreciate it, and when you're moving so fast, so always forward and at such a pace, I don't know, sometimes it just blurs a bit, and I think the time that we took off for Promised Land just allowed everybody to sit and, think about for a minute what it was that we had created together over, a period of years and albums, and I think we're just lucky. We've got a good chemistry together, and everybody rediscovered that. That. I mean, we were able to go home and hear complaints from all of our some friends that were trying to put together bands, and it's like they're going through drummers and bass players, and they can never seem to find the right lineup, of people to get going, and then it just makes you stop and think, well, shit, we've never really had that problem from day one. So I think it was just count your blessings kind of time,
So I think the chemistry between the band members is one of the secrets of your longevity, I would definitely say. So you've got the European tour next few weeks, and in fact we're going to be showing you the tour dates in just a moment. Can you tell us what Queensryche have lined up after that? Because I know that you've got another video being made. You're going to do Disconnected, is that right?
Yeah, that is right. Actually, I think we're going to try to shoot Disconnected right after the pause between the end of this leg of the European shows and then going to Japan, which we do after that. So we'll do another video for that, and then we'll go to Japan, and we do 2 weeks over there, come back, and we have 10 days home in the States, and then we start up the U.S.
Wow.
And then hopefully do it all again like we did last time around. I think it's like 60 weeks we're talking about.
Crikey.
Something like that, yeah.
Gosh, that is a long tour.
It'll be extensive.
So any message that you'd just like to finish with for people watching out there in Europe? I'll go over to Eddie.
I'm sorry.
Just to finish on a message. Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans out there in Europe?
Thanks for the support. If you have some time off, why don't you come on out and experience the Queensryche show?
Definitely. Right, and I'm going to finish on a very profound question here, and I don't know who to ask this to, but I think I'll go to Chris for this one. It's my humble opinion that Promised Land takes you on a journey from the first song, 928, when you hear the flat line heart and then the baby crying, right through to the last song, Someone Else, which does end with a question. Is there any kind of significance? It's almost like you've left an open-ended thing to the album there.
The journey, you've nailed it, really. Yeah. The concert.
Can I write your next album with you then?
Well, that's what I was getting to, Vanessa. Was that you should help us out, But no, it is really a journey that we've structured the tour, as Jeff said. The show, it really begins and ends very similar to the way the album does, but with encompassing the bulk of the body of our work in there. It is a question mark at the end of the album, and I think. Jeff sums up in Someone Else this idea that, he's looking back at who he was even in a time before, and realizing that each day, we're all someone else, and that change is inevitable and change is good. Yeah. People get caught up in trying to be one period of their life throughout life, and others around them maybe get caught up not accepting the fact that we all, move forward and become new people. So, the album it does leave with this open embracement, I suppose, of change is good, and,
And a feeling of hope as well.
Yeah.
Well, we hope so.
Yes.
We hope it has hope.
We hope it has hope, yeah.
Well, that was my interpretation. So anyway, that's just about all we've got time for. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all the Queensryche dudes for having us out on the road with them in Paris. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've found it fascinating, and I've learned something from talking to you as well as listening to the album. So I want to wish you lots of luck for the rest of the tour.
Thank you.
And mega thanks to you. It's been great seeing you again, and we're going to finish now in the only way we can, and that is with a live performance excerpt from Queensryche, and you're going to be seeing the rest of the European tour dates as well, so do come and enjoy an evening with Queensryche. If you can, check out if they're coming to a town near you. But for now, this is Vanessa and Queensryche signing off from Paris. You'll see these guys out on the road, and I'll see you next week, so thanks very much.
Yep.
We'll wave goodbye. Bye.